Friends of the Family, Episode 1. The year was 10,323. The city of New Metropolis looked like a neon-drenched paradise pulled straight from a futuristic racing simulation. Towering skyscrapers of polished chrome and crystalline glass stretched miles into the upper atmosphere, connected by humming, floating energy tracks where automated cargo pods zipped around like shooting stars. The sky was a brilliant shade of electric violet, illuminated by massive holographic advertisements broadcasting the latest tech updates across the immediate universe. Down below, there were no roads, no cars, and no airplanes. Instead, citizens walked around wearing sleek, metallic wristwatches, quantum teleportation devices that allowed anyone to type in coordinates and instantly vanish, traveling across continents or even to neighboring planets in a fraction of a second. Yet, inside a cold, metallic legal office located in the heart of the corporate district, the sheer technological marvel of the 11th millennium couldn't mask the intense, bitter human tension radiating through the room. Sarah Harrington sat stiffly in a floating hover chair, her face a mask of absolute resentment. Her 3 children, Chloe, Ethan, and Lily, all now in their mid-teenage years, stood closely behind her. Chloe was nervously adjusting her metallic jacket, while Ethan and Lily kept their eyes glued to their own teleportation watches, trying to ignore the heavy drama unfolding right in front of them. Sitting across the polished obsidian table was Keziah, looking equally hostile. Behind Keziah stood her own teenage son, whom she had uniquely named Jackson. Jackson was tapping his high-tech sneakers against the floor, glaring back at the Harrington siblings with matched intensity. The shared history between these two families was completely fractured. Sarah harbored deep resentment, firmly believing that Keziah had disrupted her home and torn her family apart years ago. Keziah, meanwhile, was consumed by intense jealousy over the fact that Sarah had been married first and shared 3 beautiful children with Thomas. To make the hypocrisy even worse, Keziah had been secretly disloyal to the family structure the entire time anyway, creating a web of pride and hidden secrets that had finally exploded. Now, with Thomas gone from the physical realm, the 2 rivals were forced into the same room to fight over the meager scraps left behind in a practically drained, cheap bank account and a tiny life insurance policy that barely covered the cost of recharging their quantum wristwatches. "Let's be entirely honest," Sarah said, her voice dripping with venom as she glared across the table. "You shouldn't even be in this room, Keziah. You brought nothing but chaos into our lives, and now you're trying to claim the absolute scraps of what's left? It's pathetic." Keziah laughed harshly, leaning forward onto the obsidian glass. "Oh, please, Sarah, you think you hold all the rights just because you were there first? You're living in the past. This is 10,323, and I have just as much right to these credits as you do. Jackson needs a new hoverboard upgrade, and I won't let you freeze us out." "Both of you are being totally ridiculous," Chloe muttered from the back, rolling her eyes. "We're literally arguing over pennies in a broken database. Can we just split the digital credit so we can teleport out of here? This room is giving me an absolute headache." "Stay out of this, Chloe," Sarah snapped gently, her eyes never leaving Keziah. "This is about principle. This woman is a total hypocrite, and I will not let her take another thing from us." "Who are you calling a hypocrite?" Keziah shouted, her hands slamming onto the table as she stood up. The shouting match was about to reach an absolute breaking point when the reality of the room violently fractured. Act 2. The Supernatural Intrusion. Without warning, the neon lights in the office began to violently flicker from electric violet to a bright, blinding gold. A sudden, deep pressure filled the air, so intense that the floating hover chair suddenly dropped 3 inches to the metallic floor with a loud thud. Then came a sound that completely defied all laws of futuristic physics. A loud, echoing crash shattered the ceiling, but no debris fell. Instead, a massive, uncoordinated figure came tumbling directly out of thin air, plunging headfirst into a giant decorative digital houseplant in the corner of the office. Synthetic leaves and neon soil flew everywhere as the figure executed a clumsy, catastrophic roll across the room, finally coming to a hard stop right between Sarah and Keziah's chairs. Sarah let out a piercing shriek of absolute bone-chilling horror, leaping back against the wall. Her face went completely pale, her eyes wide with the kind of primal fear you only see in an ancient horror movie. She was entirely convinced she was witnessing a terrifying supernatural anomaly or a psychological fracture. Keziah was equally paralyzed, her jaw dropped so low it looked unhinged. She didn't scream, but she was completely blown away, her hands trembling as she stared at the impossible entity that had just materialized on the floor. Standing up from the ruined plastic plant was a towering angel. He possessed 2 massive, brilliant white wings that were currently covered in fake digital moss, and floating directly above his head was a glowing golden halo. But this was no majestic, terrifying warrior of light. This was Mr. Moose. His face was wide, his expression was completely dizzy, and he was currently holding his golden halo sideways over his nose like a pair of broken spectacles. "Whoa, hup, hold the quantum elevator," Mr. Moose announced, his slurred words carrying a manic, rapid-fire energy as he staggered heavily to the left, nearly taking out the corporate computer terminal. He pulled at the collar of his white robe with a grand, theatrical flourish. The traffic between the upper dimensions and this metropolis is absolutely terrible. I tell ya, I get no respect. I typed the wrong coordinates into my cosmic navigation system, and I think I just spent 20 minutes traveling through a vending machine. My left wing is currently tasting like grape soda. Chloe, Ethan, Lily, and Jackson all stood perfectly still, looking around the room in total confusion. "Mom? Why are you screaming at the corner?" Ethan asked, blinking at Sarah. "And why are you guys staring at the empty floor?" Sarah pointed a shaking, trembling finger directly at the giant wobbly angel who was currently trying to untangle his foot from a loose power cord. You don't see him. You don't see the giant man with the wings and the glowing circle." "There's literally nothing there, Mom," Lily said, checking her quantum watch. "Are your sensors malfunctioning?" "There's nobody there." It was the absolute ultimate twist. Only Sarah and Keziah could see and hear him. To their teenage children, the two women were simply losing their minds, yelling at empty air in the middle of a corporate office. Act 3, the trillion% mayhem. Mr. Moose completely ignored the kids, turning his wide, out-of-focus eyes directly onto Sarah and Keziah. He executed a slow-motion, incredibly clumsy shuffle step toward the obsidian table, his balance shifting so wildly he looked like an uncoordinated toddler trying to navigate a zero-gravity chamber. "All right, ladies, listen up. I am your new official guardian angel." Mr. Moose slurred beautifully, his voice booming through their ears while the teenagers just stared at their moms in absolute silence. "Jericho gave me the assignment because he said you two needed a highly sophisticated, intellectual guide. And let me tell you, I get no respect. Absolutely none. I tried to introduce myself to a cloud on the way down here, and it rained on me. The utter disrespect." Keziah clutched her head, her voice a panicked whisper as she looked at Sarah, their mutual hatred temporarily paused by shared supernatural terror. "Sarah, you see him too, right? Please tell me I haven't completely lost my sanity. He has a blueberry leaf stuck to his forehead." "I see him," Sarah gasped, shielding her eyes from the bright, blinking halo. He's hideous. He's a complete buffoon. Why is he our guardian angel?" "Buffoon? Me?" Mr. Moose chuckled loudly, doing a dramatic, theatrical spin that resulted in him accidentally sitting completely backwards on a hoverchair, his legs dangling over the headrest while his wings flapped frantically to keep him upright. "I'll have you know I'm a scholar. I went to a futuristic doctor in the city center last week. I told him, 'Doc, every time I teleport, I end up in the exact same closet.' The guy looks at my watch, checks my settings, and says, 'George, you're not typing coordinates, you're just pressing the microwave button.' No respect at all. He charged me 50 credits for a diagnostic test that could have been solved by a kitchen timer." Jackson stepped toward his mom, looking deeply concerned. "Mom, you're talking to a chair. There is literally nobody sitting there. Should I type in the coordinates for the local medical facility on my watch? You're acting completely unhinged." "No! Stay back, Jackson," Keziah yelled, waving her arms wildly as Mr. Moose suddenly leaned his entire torso backward, losing his gravity completely and tumbling off the hoverchair onto his back. He lay flat on the floor, his ankle twirling in the air while his halo began to spin around his big toe like a glowing top. From his position on the metallic floor, his slurred, rapid-fire tirade didn't miss a single beat. "I'm telling ya, my luck is completely terrible," Mr. Moose shouted to the ceiling. "I tried to buy a high-tech insurance policy for my feathers yesterday. The agent looks at my wings, looks at my face, and says, 'Sir, we only cover majestic eagles, not confused ostriches.' I tell ya, my family tree is a complete comedy routine. My uncle down on Earth tried to invent a solar-powered flashlight. He spent 3 years wondering why it only worked when the sun was shining. No respect at all. Someone call a tow truck for my dignity." Sarah and Keziah stood completely isolated in their shared madness, terrified, blown away, and utterly trapped. They couldn't expose him to the public without being committed to a psychiatric ward, meaning these two bitter rivals were now forced into an absolute partnership to survive the most ridiculous cosmic protection in the universe. Mr. Moose suddenly scrambled to his feet, completely bypassed the two women, and walked directly up to the camera lens. He locked his wide, blinking eyes onto the screen, gave a sharp, uncoordinated, completely wobbly salute that knocked his own halo sideways across his nose, and broke the fourth wall with a giant, dizzy grin, as the episode reached its chaotic conclusion.